Bonjour mes amis, je m'appelle Elo et aujourd'hui, today, we are going to be continuing our French series in ASMR. So today, first we're going to just go over some new vocabulary, pretty basic stuff, but things that you would often use or maybe just want to know. And then we're going to get into a couple more difficult grammar concepts that we are sort of continuations of things that we've already been talking about in our previous videos. So to get started, let's look at some vocabulary. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to discuss is the different way to address someone, and in English we would say Mr., Mrs., or Ms. And the French have the same sort of style. So here we go. We have each of our equivalents. So if you're speaking to a man, it's Monsieur, Monsieur, Mr. If you're speaking to a grown woman, a married woman, I assume that it's similar. I'm not positive about this, but I assume that it's similar to in English where when a woman is of a certain age, she becomes a ma'am instead of a miss. But you may actually need to be married. They might have some other sort of term too that I don't know about. These are just the ones that have been taught to me. So Madame is Mrs. And if you've ever taken French, you probably remember calling your teacher Madame, because that's sort of what we do over here. And then finally for Ms., which would be a younger, unmarried woman, we have Mademoiselle, which I think most English speakers have at least been exposed to Mademoiselle et Monsieur. I think most of us have heard that, both of those terms. So the difference here though is that since these are obviously not the same words in English, there are different abbreviations. So let's say you're writing cards or something and you want to abbreviate. These are your abbreviations. So whereas we have MR, they just have an M period for Monsieur. Madame is uppercase M, lowercase m, E. And Mademoiselle is uppercase M and then lowercase LLE. So in French, these are your abbreviations for each of the corresponding words. Again, it's Mr., Mrs., and Ms. This is also something that you can add to saying hello or goodbye to be more respectful. So, au revoir, madame, or au revoir, monsieur, bonjour, monsieur. These are all things that can be tagged on just to show a little bit of extra respect. I did also want to mention at the beginning, and I forgot, that I have some French viewers as well, which is very nice. Bonjour. And they have all been very helpful in correcting some of the things, or just helping me with pronunciation and stuff. And they did mention to me that in my first video, when I was doing greetings, I was talking about saying good morning, and then like good day, and then good night. And I wasn't totally sure about the difference between bonsoir and bonne nuit, which has been cleared up. But the other thing that I didn't know is that I said good morning is bon matin, which is what I was taught here in school in America. But the native French speakers who know better have informed me that that's not a phrase. No one says that. So I guess don't say that. They said that bonjour is pretty much just any time of day up until 6 p.m. And that bonne nuit is like telling someone good night, like when they're going to bed, like, oh, good night, I'll see you tomorrow, kind of thing. But bonsoir is more like good evening. So like if you're after 6 p.m. and you're on a business meeting at 7 p.m. or something, you might greet someone instead of just by saying hello, by saying bonsoir. But if you're tucking your child into bed, you would say bonne nuit, like good night. So just some small but significant differences that I just wanted to let you all know about. It's very strange to me. I guess I should expect it, but it is strange to me that the textbooks that I studied here have bon matin printed in them. That wasn't just something I made up. We were taught that. So it's just very interesting, and I'm interested to see what else that I go over. My French speaking friends will correct me and tell me we don't say that, or say this, or it's like this. So I will always inform you of those differences because I don't want to be providing inaccurate information. That's not the point. So just so you know. And if you haven't watched that video, then the point still applies to any video that you do watch. I'm hoping to be as accurate as possible. So I'll try to correct anything that I learned differently. But for now, all of this is coming out of American lessons and textbooks. So take that for what it's worth. So let's get back into the vocabulary. Sorry for that sidebar. This one particular textbook I have has mentioned that whenever you're saying goodbye or hello to like a peer, a colleague, or an acquaintance, that French people always shake hands. I don't know if that's true, but that's what it says. And it also says that close friends and family exchange kisses, like on the cheeks, and depending on where in the country they're from, I guess it varies. Kind of like how here in certain regions it's more common for parents to like kiss their kids on the mouth, and in other places that's like really weird. And then some people do like a cheek bump kiss, which is really common like where I'm from. And then other people have like multiple kisses on either side. So I think depending on where you're from in France, you might do like 1 or 2, or you might do 4 or 5. I don't know, depending. That's just what I've learned. I'm not positive about that either, but it would make sense to me since we have a similar sort of thing here in America. And kisses, you may have heard bisous. I think that's like des bis, kisses, bisous. There's a song, if you've ever watched Mad Men, towards the end of the show, one of the women sings this song, and it sounds like she's saying zoo bisou bisou, but she's actually saying bisou, like kisses. It's like French. Okay, and then another way to say goodbye, I don't know that we ever talked about any ways to say goodbye. I may have just covered hello. So let's do this. So here are two forms of saying goodbye. Au revoir, au revoir. Whenever you see this, AU, it doesn't really matter if it's at the beginning, middle, or end of a word. I've never come across an instance where it doesn't sound like an O. So if ever If ever you see the AU, think O and make the O shape with your mouth. Kind of like you may have seen the word or heard the word beau, like boyfriend, my beau. This all just sounds like O. O, O. So here we have au revoir means goodbye, au revoir. And then here we have what it also means goodbye, but kind of like hasta luego in Spanish, or see you later, see you soon. This one sort of has the expectation that you'll be talking or seeing that person again in the near future. So, a bientôt, a bientôt. See you soon. I think that this is commonly used as well, though, as a goodbye. I'm not sure that it has to mean see you soon, but I've just been taught that that's sort of the connotation or the implication, is that if someone's going on a long trip, you'd say bon voyage, like good journey, good travel, good voyage, you could even think. So this would be, and most Americans have heard that saying as well, bon voyage, this is good. So that would be if someone's going away for an extended period of time and you're not going to see them, or they're taking a trip, going on vacation, holiday, whatever you want to call it, bon voyage. But this is like someone you'll probably see again soon. Okay. All right. Okay. There's also this word, salut, which I believe is almost like aloha in the sense that you can use it to say hello or goodbye. I learned that it's more of the French Canadian dialect that will use salut as goodbye, as au revoir. But I'm not sure. In France, I'm not sure if they use this as only a greeting. I know they do use it as a greeting, but I don't know if they use it as a goodbye as well. So that's another viable option instead of saying bonjour or any other sort of opening greeting. I'm trying to think if I've taught any other ones. Okay. The next thing I should say is saying thank you and you're welcome, because we need to keep our manners. Okay. I could have written this better. But hopefully I can explain it okay. Okay, so first of all, to say thank you to someone, it's merci. Merci, which a lot of people have probably heard before, even English speakers. You can add to merci, you can add beaucoup. So remember, here we have that AU, which makes the O. So you could say merci beaucoup, beaucoup, merci beaucoup, which is like thank you very much or thank you a lot. Beaucoup is like a lot of. And you may have heard people saying, I got beaucoup bucks or beaucoup bucks, which are terrible translations, but that's how it's been sort of Americanized into the phrase. And that's when people are saying, I have a lot of money. I got beaucoup cash. What they're trying to say is beaucoup, beaucoup, merci beaucoup. Thank you very much, thank you a lot. Then we have 3 different ways that I know of to say you're welcome. So all 3 of these mean you're welcome. However, this is the most formal way I know to say this. So this is je vous en prie. So you may remember from earlier videos that when we have this consonant before a word that starts with a vowel, the consonant, even if it's not an S, maybe it's a T or something else, is going to sort of drag into that next vowel so that there are no harsh vowels beginning a word, and everything musically, melodically flows together. Je vous en prie. Je vous en prie. And remember, this is not j'ai, it's je. The E makes a very distinct sound. Not an E or an it's an Je vous en prie. So that's you're welcome, but formally. The one that I tend to use is de rien. De rien. So just like we saw je, this is de, not de or di or anything like that. De. De rien. You're welcome. And then there's il n'y a pas de quoi. Il n'y a pas de quoi. Il n'y a pas de quoi. Which is kind of like saying there's not a problem. It's more informal. This is a negative, what's the word? Like structure. It's negating, like saying not. And we'll get into that probably maybe 1 or 2 lessons from now. But this is different a little bit because it's not saying directly you're welcome. It's saying like something like there's not a problem. So it's more of what I would think you would say to a friend, or some people at work even say this to their customers or something. Like if you work in a more relaxed environment and you hand someone a product they want to look at and they say thank you, you say not a problem, no problem. So that's sort of the French equivalent. Okay. So the next thing that I definitely wanted to discuss this time is how to ask how someone's doing. So last time we talked about how to say, what is your name? How to ask someone what their name is and how to reply. So we had Comme vous appelez-vous, the formal, and then we had Comme t'appelles-tu, the informal. And you respond with Je m'appelle, and then whatever your name is. So Je m'appelle Ilo. This time we're going to look at a similar construction, but it's going to mean how are you doing? So these are your formal versions that we'll discuss first. Okay, so if you remember from last time, the translation was not exact. When you're asking someone what their name is, you're moreover asking them, how do you call yourself? And it's similar in this new construction because, again, this is not a direct translation here. This is more of their own way that they say it, and we equate it. So this is the formal, which formel. I'll start writing it the way that they spell it in French so we can get more accustomed. F-O-R-M-E-L, formal, formel. So here we have comment allez-vous? Comment allez-vous? So again, we're gonna roll this T over into the A a little bit, so it's comment allez-vous, allez-vous. And this is like, so this is where it gets a little weird, but aller, aller, A-L-L-E-R, is the verb that means to go somewhere. So if I say like I'm going to the store, this is the verb I would use. It means literally going somewhere. But then it's also used in this sense to mean like how are things going for you. So remember, vous is our formal version of you. So you're basically saying, how is it going for you? Or, like, are things going well for you? Bien, vous allez bien. Bien is a word for good. And again, we're gonna loop these into each other. Vous allez bien. Remember that EZ and ER are both noises that sound like A. Vous allez bien. It's not à l'aise. There's no Z pronounced. Vous allez bien. So like things are going good for you, things are going well for you. Or how. Comment, remember, is our word for how. Comment allez-vous? Comment allez-vous? So these are your formal ways to ask someone, how's it going? How are things for you? Are things good for you? That kind of thing. And again, you would use your formal version when you are talking to someone older than you, someone you don't know very well, someone that you need to pay respect to. Anything like that. Then we'll do the informal. So then we'll look here at the informal. Familier. So you can think familiar. Informal. Someone who you know. And this is asking how someone's doing. So, comment vas-tu? Comment vas-tu? This is still your verb. Aller, meaning to go. The thing is that this verb is an irregular verb. So in much of its conjugation, it doesn't look like the infinitive form of the verb. It looks different. However, in the vous form, it does look similar. So that's why this can be a little confusing at first. But once you learn those verb conjugations, and this is another one that's pretty darn overused. It's very prevalent in the language and in everyday speech because of how much you might say something like, here's where I'm going to the store, or and then in this sort of construction as well, asking how someone's doing. So this is like saying, how are things going for you? Remember, tu is now our form of you instead of vous. That's the formal. Des formels. This is familier. Tu. So, comment vas-tu? How is it going for you? Or comment ça va? Remember, we learned this accent, which is called the cedilla, and it's a little marking, like a hook, that's put on the bottom of your C that makes it sound like an S instead. So this is not ça va, ça va, comment ça va. And I've noticed just in speaking with native French speakers that they'll often just ditch this and just say ça va, like how's it going, are things going well for you kind of thing. And we'll discuss how to reply to these things at another point. But for right now, we're just going to get the questions down because I know this is quite a bit of information. So these are all of your informal ways of asking how someone's doing. Okay, so now we've got some new vocabulary on verbs. Overall, we've talked about how to say hello, bonjour, which you'll use pretty much any time until 6. Bonsoir, bonne nuit. We've gone over how to ask someone how they're doing. We've talked about, in previous lesson, we've talked about our question words, meaning how, what, why, when, where. We've talked about how to ask someone their name, and we also discussed our very important verbs être and avoir. So remember to keep practicing those verbs. They're incredibly important, and we can look over them once more before we move on to grammar. Just as a refresher and to keep this really going in your mind, this is our verb être, which means to be, and these are our conjugations. So we have je suis, I am, tu es, you are, il est, elle est, or on est, and this is he is, she is, or one is. Nous sommes, we are. Vous êtes, you are, formal. Ils sont, elles sont. This is they are, or they are. Il being the masculine form, or an inclusive group. Anytime a group has even one male in it, you'll use il. But if it's completely feminine, elle. Talk about a bunch of women. Elles sont. Okay? and avoir. I always second guess myself, but I know this stuff. Like, I will never forget these verbs, but I'm always worried because I tried to come up with ways to remember the little quirks and differences. But these are backwards because, these aren't backwards, but my connection is backwards because sometimes I think to myself that to is always the form that has more letters when dealing with avoir and être, but to is the form that has two letters. So in the previous conjugation it was just es, and this one was est, and here it's as, and this one's just a. So just, if that helps at all, just consider the fact that the to form only has two letters. So if you can't remember which one gets the T or which one gets the S and which one's just an A, just keep that sort of thought in your mind. Tends to help me, even though I second guess myself very unnecessarily. Okay, so this is our other verb that we learned, which is avoir, meaning to have. Remember that in our first person conjugation, this becomes a contraction because we are not going to have je, a. So we just condense to j'ai, which is I have, tu as, you have, il a, elle a, or on a, which is he has, she has, one has. Nous avons, which is we have. Vous avez, which is you have but formal. Ils ont, elles ont. So this is they have or they have. Again, masculine versus feminine. Okay? And I believe in our next lesson, I'm going to start introducing some phrases. So there are very specific phrases that go with both of these verbs. There's actually a long list for both verbs, and they're sort of just things that you have to learn and know which one's which. But they're things like I'm cold, I'm hungry, I'm thirsty. They're expressions of being or having, and both être and avoir take different expressions, not like we would say them in English. So like, I think one of the ones on the avoir side is faim, which is hunger, F-A-I-M. So when you're saying like, I'm hungry, we say I am hungry, which is a state of being, which would make it the être side for us. We say I am hungry, but they say I have hunger, j'ai faim. So there are some differences that you wouldn't expect, and you just have to learn which words go with which expressions. So I think next time we'll get into that as our vocab instead of just learning little phrases like what's your name and how are you. I think that the verbs start to make more sense the more of them that you learn. Don't get me wrong, it gets very complicated. There are a lot of different patterns. My first ever French teacher used to talk about the different order of verbs, and she would use Roman numerals to say these are verbs of the first order, second order, third order, fourth order, and so on. And so like all of the regular ER verbs, all verbs which end in ER and are conjugated according to the same pattern are first order verbs. They're the easiest ones to learn, the easiest ones to spell. They have the least wonky restrictions or improvisations to them, I guess, if you want to think of it that way. And as you move up through these, you get new groupings of verbs which follow similar patterns when being conjugated, but as you go up in number, they get a little bit harder. So like, I think in the third order you have like irregular IR verbs, which instead of being conjugated in a simpler fashion, they end up getting like extra letters stuck into the middle of them when you conjugate them, which makes them seen as more difficult. So there are pros and cons to learning a lot of verbs all at once. I think that it provides a really good picture when you can have sort of an aerial view of all the verbs and say, okay, so here's the field that has all of these verbs and they all are conjugated similarly. So if I know that they're in the first order, then I know exactly how they're going to get conjugated because I know all of the endings. That's the thing, is the endings stay the same in the different groupings. So for example, we have verbs that will end in ing, and they all pretty much follow the same pattern, like talking, walking, skiing, biking, hunting, fishing. They all come from different verbs. To walk, to hunt, to fish, to ski. Those are your infinitive forms. But then when you conjugate them, they all turn out the same way. So you're already doing this in your primary language, and you don't even think about it. So it's like, that's not hard at all. But then when you start learning all these verbs in another language, it can be really overwhelming until you see like, oh, okay, these 20 verbs all end up the exact same way. So as long as I can remember that they're all together, then even if I forget for a second how it's supposed to go, I just remember, oh, that's a first order verb, so it's gonna go exactly like this. And you'll never be wrong. That's a good thing. On the con side, there are a lot of irregularities and exceptions in French, so it can get really frustrating and confusing because you think something should be like, you're like, why isn't it like this? And there's a reason that makes sense, but sometimes it's hard to see when you're learning it right then and there. So I think what I'm going to do is in a future video, when I get around to introducing more verbs, I'm probably going to do that sooner than later, but I'll stick within the first order at first so that all the verbs that you're learning are the same. And then we'll build from that base once you have a good understanding. And I think that will be the easiest way. So if you are excited for more verbs, I would give it maybe 2 or so more lessons, and we should get into some pretty hefty conjugation, just maybe a whole lesson almost that's focusing on just your verbs. For now, we're going to move on to our grammar portion of this lesson, which is we're going to go back and discuss that partitive article, which I mentioned at the end of our last video, the end of lesson 2. Articles are really difficult. I'm not going to lie. Maybe this will be easy for you, and I'll be very jealous of you, but I find this to be extremely difficult to get right. And I think it's common when you're learning a foreign language for articles to be something that get messed up a lot. And I say this because I have been a tutor for an online tutoring company for a number of years now, and there are many times where I am working with students who are speaking English as their second language, and the most common things that they have trouble with are articles and preposition choice, aside from verb tense. So if this seems hard, that's because it is, and it's not, it just takes time and practice really to get these better. So first we're going to do just a quick review. So, you may remember that with articles we have the indefinite and the definite. Défini, indéfini. Okay, the indefinite is when we're talking about something, but it's not specific. It's indefinite, not specific. So we could have a, an, or some. I think I said, can I have a newspaper, an apple, or some popcorn? You're not being particular over which newspaper, which apple, or which pieces of popcorn. You just want a newspaper, an apple, or some popcorn. So again, just think it's indefinite. It's not specific about what you're referring to. You just want one of many. And we have here our little chart, which has masculine and feminine, singular and plural. Those are the sort of outer markings of our grid here. So singular masculine is un. Singular feminine is une. Plural feminine and masculine plural are the same, which is day. And remember, this is like our word D-A-Y, day. If there was no S, it would be de, but since there is an S, it becomes des. So if you're talking about one of something, which is a masculine item, it's un. If you're talking about one of something that's a feminine item, une. And if you're talking about plural of an item, which is masculine or feminine, it'll take des. So each of these 4 words is substituted for a, an, or some, which I know can be confusing because it's like, how do we have one word that means 3 different words? But that's just the way that it is in French. You can kind of think of it as simplified. You don't need 3 different words, you only need 1 word. So that's sort of a bonus. However, on the other hand, when we have our definite article, we get the exact opposite. It becomes more complicated because we have a single word when we're talking about something definite. Can you hand me the phone? You only mean one specific phone. Can I read the book? Can I touch the globe? You're talking about one very particular item. Definite. The or the. In French, you have more variety. So this is part of what I think makes articles so complicated when transitioning between French and English, is that we're completely opposite. But it is what it is. So if you're looking at something that's masculine and singular, so you have one item that is a masculine item that you're saying, can I have the blank, or can I look at the blank? This is going to be le. Remember, this E makes an E sound, not an A or an E sound. So le. Feminine, singular, so you have one item. May I see the blank? And it's a feminine item. That would be la. So le ou la. And then both of them have the opportunity to become L apostrophe, an L with an apostrophe. Because if you have a double vowel situation, remember that we will delete the vowel in favor of an apostrophe to glue that to the word that follows it. So either one, when in the singular form, could become l'apostrophe. And you would use other knowledge or context clues to know what the gender of the word that follows it is. So you might also be describing the color or size of the item, which might give away if it's masculine or feminine, but you may not be able to tell based on the article alone if it starts with a vowel. On the easier side, I guess, the plural is always going to be les. So whenever you're talking about the books the lunch bags, the phones, the pictures. Whenever you have plural anything that's specific, definite, it's always going to be les, which I think is pretty nice, pretty easy. And again, just like day, this is lay, like I'm gonna lay down, lay. Okay. So, if that wasn't already difficult enough, there are also contractions when dealing with articles. There are certain times when your le or your lay in the definite article columns that we just looked at will be preceded by a or de, and these become contractions. I don't have much that I can say to help you with this. I have a couple little mental tricks that I use, but overall this is something that I find pretty difficult to remember, so I'll do my best to help. Okay, so the good part is that I don't know if this is even good. It might be easier if it were for all of them, but it's not. La and l'apostrophe never have a contraction. On the other hand, these are things over here on the left side. These words, these groupings, are not allowed. So what I try to think to myself is that you can't have ales, like beer, ale, ginger ale, ales. You can't have ales and no dells either. So I think about like Adele or literally Adele and say you can't have that either. So no ale, no ales, no dell, no dells. However you want to remember that. But really what this sounds like in French is a, le. They're not gonna say a, le. So you might be saying like I'm going to the market. This is to, a, and this is the, le. So when you're saying I'm going to the whatever, instead of saying a, le, and having that weird pause in between, it just becomes o. And remember, au sounds like o, o. So you say, I am going au marché. I'm going to the is what this means, to the. But it becomes o. And if you're the is plural, a, les, o. This, when you add this x, becomes like the plural version of au. So in a way, they're very similar because it's just the singular and the plural. Whenever you have a, le, or a, les, it becomes o. But when you're new to French and you're just writing or saying something quickly and trying to get your point across, it's an extra step to have to remember that you can't say these things. So it goes unnoticed a lot until you have a teacher who's marking you off points every time you mess that up. Then you remember, but it's really difficult to just remember this on a whim when you're focused on so many other things. These things become like lesser in the order of importance, and they just get forgotten. But just try to remember no ales, no dells. So, de plus le becomes du. Remember, this is not de and lay, this is de and le. De, le, de, le, du, du. And if you have de and lay, you get day, which becomes even more confusing because day is already one of the words that we've learned. But that's how it is. So this is something that I'll try to point out in future lessons if we ever come across these contractions, when we come across these contractions, because they're pretty common. But this is just something that you have to remember as best that you can. And the only thing, like I said, that helps me is just remembering, pretending that these words are English and remembering them that way and saying that they don't allow those things. And then from there you have to remember your 4 things that they do allow. So here are your contractions. Ho, ho, do, day. And again, those are just with definite articles. And the indefinite, we're really never gonna have a situation because it was un and une. Those don't have a need to be contracted, so you don't have to worry about that. Another thing that's different is that in French, as I mentioned, I think back in the first lesson, they always use their articles when talking about nouns. So like we might say something like chicken is expensive, and we don't say it's the chicken or a chicken or some chicken is expensive. We say chicken is expensive. Well, they're gonna have that article there still, so it's gonna be, is it poulet? La poulet, I think. The chicken is expensive, or meat is expensive. They're not just gonna say just meat or just chicken. They will always have that the. So when they're talking about like a concept, like a whole of something, or something in general, milk, eggs, whatever, they're still going to have that definite article, the, in a lot of places where we wouldn't. And that's a lot easier to get used to than the stuff that we just talked about. I should probably be more upbeat about this stuff. You guys can do this. I, for whatever, have a mental block. For whatever reason, have a mental block surrounding these things. But I'm confident that you guys can do this. Okay, so this is the partitive article. It means some or any. And depending on the situation, the construction of it can vary. This is also a little confusing because the partitive article is made by contracting in some way or utilizing in some way de plus the definitive article. So if you remember, each of these options means the. So it's de, which is like of, and le, la, l'apostrophe or les, which means the. And it can mean some or any. This gets a little confusing because if you remember, the indefinite article can also mean some. When we said un, une, or des, that can mean some. But this is more of like a concept, like part of a whole. So you can ask yourself, am I talking about all of this thing or just some of it? So in our examples here, we have 3 different ways that this might look. So, j'achète du lait. I mean, that looked a little funny. Okay. J'achète du lait. So this is saying like, I am buying some milk. I'm not buying all of the milk in the store. I'm just buying some milk, some of the milk. J'achète du lait. So, if you remember from what we just talked about with our contractions, you can't have de plus le. That would give us a del, right? D-E-L-E. We can't have that. So that becomes, if you remember, du. Du. J'achète du lait. So du is our contraction based off the fact that we would have had de plus le next to each other, which we can't do. So I'm buying some of the milk. J'achète du lait. In our second sentence here, we have il commande de la viande. Il commande de la viande. So this is like saying he orders some meat. Viande is the meat, okay? So in this situation we have de plus la. So this is your partitive article. And if you remember, la and l'apostrophe do not contract. So it just stays de la. And this is saying he orders some meat. He's not asking for all the meat in the restaurant. He's ordering some meat. Demande de l'eau, s'il te plaît. Demande de l'eau, s'il te plaît. So this is ask for some water, if you please. S'il te plaît. So l'eau, that's our water. And this is an l'apostrophe because of the word beginning with a vowel. Water is E-A-U-O. You may have seen this on like a perfume bottle, eau de parfum, you know. So this is the word for water. Demande de l'eau, s'il te plaît. So here we have de plus l'apostrophe, making our meaning of some. So saying ask for some water, please. Okay. Again, this is just something that I think is very difficult and comes with time. But if you're ever seeing these constructions and wondering like, what is that? It's saying some or any when you're just referring to part of a larger whole. The good news is those are all your articles. So you have your definite, indefinite, and your partitive. Some of them contract, some of them don't. But overall, those are the basics for your articles. There are some other little funky sort of rules, especially if you're working in the negative or whatever. But we'll get to that when we get to it. I think this is plenty of new information for now. So I hope that you've enjoyed this. Today we talked about some new vocabulary, ways to greet people, say goodbye to people, ask how they're doing, and then we've looked again at our two most important verbs, être, to be, and avoir, to have. And then we recapped our articles and added the partitive article. So I'm hoping next time to look at some of those expressions dealing with être and avoir, and I'll see what else might be appropriate for this point. I hope that you've been enjoying this. thank you again to everyone who has been letting me know what I'm doing wrong, essentially. I'll be sure to try to provide that information as I learn it to all of you. So, thank you. Merci beaucoup for watching. Et au revoir.